Hey, Vivian.
Hey, Brian. So happy to be here to chat.
So let's talk a little bit about just zooming out, because borrowers have
Yeah.
had an emotional roller coaster of confusion over the last few years over this, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, let's just be honest. This system has never been that clear, cut, and dry. Before, some of the programs we have now, there was Pay, P-A-Y-E. There was Repay, R-E-P-A-Y-E. Then there was the Save Plan, which obviously was struck down by a federal court. Now we have Trump's plan called RAP, R-A-P. And I think a lot of this jargon is actually making a confusing situation worse.
I mean, you mentioned it's like an alphabet soup of different acronyms that people might be enrolled in. People might not even know what they're enrolled in. Sometimes when I talk to my friends who are trying to pay back their student loans, they can't keep track of even what it's supposed to look like. When you talk to people or engage with people on your millions of followers across your social media accounts, what do you advise them to do when dealing with student debt?
I ask them to look at the actual numbers. Not all student loans are created equal. There are subsidized, unsubsidized loans. There are loans with fixed interest rates. There are ones that have variable ones, like depending on what kind of loan you got based on your or your family's credit score or what have you. And so my advice is always don't let the fact that you have student loans hold you back from living your life and still making other smart financial choices. But it is something that people have to consider. It's a huge factor. I actually recently worked on a study with my partners at SoFi. It's called the Cost of Admission 2025. And what was crazy to me, absolutely crazy to me, was the fact that if you actually look at the numbers, you're seeing that 68% of people would rather talk about their sex lives than their debt. But 88% of people that responded to this survey said that they've had to put something else in their life on hold because of student debt. You're telling me that nearly 9 out of 10 people have had to change their life because of their student loan payments, and yet they still don't want to talk about it? We have to talk about it.
Yeah, so let's recap that because that's really fascinating. The idea here is that student debt, especially for millennials and Gen Z, are such a boogeyman over the rest of their finances. Is it dramatic to say it's the biggest financial crisis among that generation?
I think it's one of the largest. I think the three things we really need to think about are the fact that the cost of an education has skyrocketed and people are taking on these monstrous debt loads to be able to pay for it. The cost of housing has exponentially increased. However, the third thing is that wages have stagnated. If you actually look on a inflation adjusted number, like we are not making as much as people did back in the day. However, everything costs more.
And maybe that explains, if we come back full circle here, the income-based repayment plans. The reason why they're so popular is because living costs are so high that it's no longer feasible, and the cost of going to school is so much higher that it's no longer feasible to just pay the fixed amount as originally stated on a 15-year plan where the payments are exactly the same.
Yeah, and I think that's also why so many young people feel like the generations above them, quote unquote, don't get it, because our parents went to school for a couple $1,000s, and maybe they had a work study program that allowed them to help pay it off, or maybe they took on that debt, but after they graduated, they again put their head down, they got that job, they paid it off. But the numbers are very different when you're paying back $5,000 versus $50,000 versus $100,000.
And when you, again, talk to people about how to handle not just maybe necessarily student debt, but overall debt in an environment like this, what's the advice?
I always say use the rule of 7. So I actually encourage folks to rank their debt from highest to lowest interest rate. And you're going to make the minimum payment across everything just to ensure that you don't, fall into the default zone. But really prioritize paying down the debts that have over like 7% or over in terms of an interest rate. So things at the top of this list typically are credit cards, 20 to 30% APRs. Then you've got things like car loans. You've got things like, if you got a mortgage recently, you might have something with a 7% handle on it. If you got a federal subsidized loan graduating college around when I did, like you might have like a 4 or 5% like interest rate that's fixed, in which case you don't need to stress about paying it all off overnight. You can make the minimum payment and do the best you can. And then any additional funds you can start putting towards investing and start the rest of your life. Because at the end of the day, debt is a tool. It is not morally good or bad, but you need to look at the numbers. You need to make a plan and ultimately be smart about it in the holistic picture of your financial journey.
What is the biggest question you usually get about student loans?
Biggest question I get is probably, do I think they're going to be forgiven? And
what do you say? You don't have a crystal ball into what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, listen, do I think that there may be a chance that this happens in the future? Sure. But I'm not here holding my breath. I do not have a crystal ball. And I certainly don't believe that any administration, whether it's Democratic, Republican, nobody's here to save me. I need to pay off my own debt. I'm not going to wait for loan forgiveness. If it happens, great. It is a cherry on the sundae. But at the end of the day, I am the captain of my own ship, and I'm going to figure it out myself.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.